Under the clear glass towers of Draonius Prime, where two suns painted the sky in colors of orange and yellow, Queen Seraphina watched her daughter's heart break as each suitor was presented to her. The old tradition required her to choose, but Princess Lyra's eyes looked empty as rich and powerful dragons showed off their wealth and strength in the shadows of the mechanics' neighborhood, where steam hissed from old spaceships and dirty hands worked magic on broken engines. A single father named Marcus held his daughter close. He had no idea that fate was about to connect their worlds forever. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more amazing stories like this one. Oh, and before we begin, tell us in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love hearing from you and always read every message. The Great Hall of Draonius Prime stretched beneath a dome made of living crystal. Its walls glowed with bright veins that copied the heartbeat of the planet itself. Old tapestries showed the glory of the Dragon Kingdom, woven from threads that captured starlight and held it prisoner for thousands of years. Yet, beneath all this grandness, Princess Lyra sat still on her silver throne, her purple eyes showing none of the room's beauty. "Another suitor approaches, Your Highness," announced Chancellor Vex, his scaly face twisted into what passed for politeness among his kind. "Lord Pion of the Obsidian Peaks, commander of 7 space fleets, and heir to the fire mines of Igneous 7. The Dragon Lord walked forward, his red scales gleaming like polished armor, each step echoing with the weight of centuries. His group followed in perfect order, carrying gifts that could ransom entire worlds: frozen starfire, liquid moonbeams captured in time spheres, weapons forged in the heart of dying suns. Princess Lyra. Pion's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I offer you control over 17 star systems, armies that could crush entire civilizations, and wealth beyond the dreams of lesser species. Marry me, and together we shall expand the Dragon Empire until every star bows before our might." The assembled court murmured their approval, a symphony of whispers that spoke of political advantage and smart alliances. Queen Seraphina watched from her raised throne, her ancient eyes calculating the benefits such a marriage would bring. Yet her daughter's face remained a mask of marble indifference. "I appreciate your offer, Lord Pion." Lyra's voice barely carried across the huge room. "But I need time to consider all options before making such a huge decision." Pion's eyes flashed with barely controlled anger. No one had ever dared delay their answer to his proposals. The court's whispers turned to uncomfortable shifting as the Dragon Lord's composure cracked like heated stone. "Time," he snarled. "What more could you possibly need to know? I am offering you everything." But while the hall filled with tension, and the Lord's rage echoed off crystal walls in the depths of the mechanics' quarter, a gentle hand was braiding a small girl's hair, completely unaware that the princess above was dreaming of such simple tenderness. The mechanics' quarter existed in constant twilight, nestled beneath the floating towers of the rich neighborhoods, where artificial daylight never quite reached. Steam rose from countless workshops, where the forgotten machinery of 100 worlds found new life under skilled hands. Here among the outcasts and the working class, Marcus Sullivan ran his small repair shop with careful precision. His daughter Emma, barely 7 years old, sat cross-legged on a floating cushion, her auburn hair catching what little light filtered through the dirty windows. In her small hands, she carefully painted tiny figures, not warriors or dragons like other children, but mechanics and engineers, teachers and nurses, Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Dad, why don't we ever see the pretty lights up there? Emma asked, pointing toward the crystal towers far above their heads. Marcus paused in his work, oil-stained fingers gripping a special wrench as he thought carefully about his words. 3 years had passed since Sarah's death. 3 years since the plague had swept through the lower neighborhoods, while the rich sealed themselves away in their clean towers. Those lights aren't meant for people like us, sweetheart, he said gently. But that doesn't make our lives any less beautiful. Look around you. See how Mrs. Chen grows flowers in those old engine boxes. Watch how old Pete makes music from salvaged ship parts. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow in the shadows. Above them, the crystal dome of the Great Hall continued its ancient song. But down in the quarter, a different kind of music played. The rhythm of honest work, the harmony of community, the gentle melody of a father's love, protecting his daughter from a world that had already taken too much from them. Emma nodded seriously, then returned to her painting. Today she was working on a new figure, a princess with sad eyes trapped in a tower of gold. She didn't know why, but something about the lonely figure made her heart ache. Meanwhile, in the palace above, Princess Lyra stood at her balcony overlooking the mechanics' quarter, watching the warm lights in the windows below, and wondering what it would feel like to belong somewhere, to be needed rather than simply wanted for what her royal blood could provide. No one believed the gap between their worlds could ever be crossed, but fate, it seemed, had different plans entirely. The Hall of Ancestors had witnessed 1,000 such ceremonies, its black stone walls carved with the names of every royal marriage in dragon history. Today, those ancient stones would either celebrate another political alliance or witness something never before seen in the kingdom's history. Queen Seraphina stood at the ceremonial altar, her massive dragon form casting shadows that danced like living things across the assembled court. Her daughter knelt before her, dressed in the traditional robes of choosing, silver silk that seemed to flow like liquid starlight, decorated with gems that pulsed with their own inner fire. My daughter. The queen's voice echoed through the room, each word carrying the weight of centuries. You have reached the age of choosing. The law demands you select a mate before the twin moons align or give up your claim to the throne. The suitors have presented themselves. Now you must decide our kingdom's future. The assembled nobles pressed forward, each one representing alliances, trade agreements, and military pacts that could reshape the galaxy's balance of power. Lord Pion stood at their head, his red scales polished to mirror brightness, his eyes burning with ambition. Behind him, a dozen other dragon lords waited their turn, each more powerful and wealthy than the last. I understand the seriousness of this moment, Mother, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. And I have made my choice. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Queen Seraphina's ancient eyes narrowed as she sensed something unexpected in her daughter's tone. Then speak, the queen commanded. Name your chosen mate, and let the kingdom celebrate your wisdom. Lyra rose slowly, her movements graceful as flowing water. She turned to face the assembled court, her purple eyes sweeping across the sea of expectant faces. When she spoke, her voice carried a quiet strength that silenced even the whispered conversations at the room's edges. I choose Marcus Sullivan of the Mechanics' Quarter. The silence that followed was so deep that the crystal walls seemed to stop their ancient humming. Even the glowing veins in the ceiling dimmed, as if the palace itself couldn't process what it had heard. And just when everyone thought they would break from the shock, something was revealed that no one expected. The princess began to transform, her noble features shifting to reveal the depth of a decision that had been months in the making. Queen Seraphina's massive form shook with rage, her scales darkening from golden orange to the deep red of barely controlled fury. The temperature in the hall rose dramatically as her internal fires threatened to break free. "You dare mock our ancient laws?" Her voice boomed like thunder across mountains. "A human, a mere mechanic. Have you lost your mind, child?" But Lyra stood her ground, her transformation continuing as scales began to shimmer beneath her skin. Not the traditional golden scales of royal dragons, but something never seen before. Scales that held the colors of earth and sky, of honest work and gentle strength. "I have not lost my mind, Mother. I have found my heart," Lyra said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "For 3 months, I have walked among our people in disguise. I have seen how the rich treat those they consider beneath them. I have witnessed cruelty disguised as tradition, arrogance pretending to be strength." Lord Payan stepped forward, his face twisted with disbelief and wounded pride. "This is ridiculous. You would choose poverty over power, disgrace over glory. I would choose love over conquest," Lyra replied, her eyes blazing with inner fire. "I watched Marcus Sullivan work 18-hour days to keep food on his daughter's table. I saw him give his last money to help a neighbor repair their heating unit during the cold season. I witnessed him teach his daughter kindness when the world showed them only hardship." The court erupted in chaos, voices raised in outrage and disbelief. Some nobles demanded the princess be declared mentally incompetent. Others suggested exile, or worse. But through the noise, Queen Seraphina's voice cut like a blade through silk. Silence. The hall fell quiet once more, all eyes turning to the ancient queen as she studied her daughter with new intensity. In those purple eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected. Not rebellion, but wisdom. Not madness, but a clarity that reminded her of someone from long, long ago. It wasn't just defiance. It was understanding. And suddenly, the queen realized that her daughter had learned something in those months below that no royal education could ever teach. Queen Seraphina's form began to shift, her massive dragon body shrinking into her human shape, something she rarely did in public court. As the transformation completed, she stood revealed not as the imposing ruler the court knew, but as a woman whose eyes held the weight of centuries and the wisdom of hard-won experience. "Do you know why I became queen, my daughter?" Seraphina asked, her voice now gentle, almost musical. The court leaned forward, even Lord Payan's rage momentarily forgotten in the face of their ruler's unexpected vulnerability. "I was not born to rule," the queen continued, walking slowly toward her daughter. "I was chosen by your father, Prince Aldrich, against every law and tradition of our kind. He was supposed to marry Lady Valstra of the Golden Reaches, a marriage that would have brought us 3 star systems and unlimited wealth." Gasps echoed through the room. This history had been carefully hidden, recorded only in the most secret royal archives. "But your father saw something in me that others could not or would not see. I was a scholar's daughter, working in the royal libraries, organizing the stories of our people. He found me there one night, reading aloud to myself, bringing life to the old tales. He said my voice made the ancient words sing." Lyra's eyes widened as understanding dawned. The stories you used to tell me about the librarian and the prince were about you, Serafina confirmed. Your father faced the same choice you face now. Power and tradition, or love and uncertainty. He chose love, and in doing so gave our kingdom something it had never had before. A queen who knew the value of every citizen, not just the noble ones. Lord Pion stepped forward, his voice desperate. But your majesty, surely you cannot support this madness. A human. The bloodline will be corrupted. Queen Serafina turned to face him, and in her eyes burned the fire that had made her legendary across 7 star systems. Lord Pion, you speak of bloodlines and corruption, yet you have never bled for your people. You have never worked with your hands, never struggled to put food on a table, never held a dying child, and felt powerless to save them. But the final blow came not from words. It came from a name the galaxy had long forgotten. The name of Marcus Sullivan's wife, Sarah Chen Sullivan, whose plague research had saved millions before her death, whose sacrifice had protected the very nobles who now sneered at her widowed husband. The revelation struck the hall like a meteor impact. Sarah Chen Sullivan, the name every noble knew, but few spoke aloud. The scientist who died during the Crimson Plague had saved not just the Dragon homeworld, but 17 allied systems. The human woman who had worked herself to death, finding a cure, while the rich waited safely in their sealed towers. Sarah Chen Sullivan. Queen Serafina spoke the name with reverence. She gave her life to save ours. While we debated politics and alliances, she worked 20-hour shifts in contaminated labs, refusing evacuation, refusing rest, refusing to abandon her research, even as the plague consumed her body. Her husband, Marcus, donated their life savings to fund additional research stations. Her daughter, Emma, draws pictures of scientists and doctors, because her mother taught her that heroism comes in many forms. Lord Pion's scales had lost their shiny red color. Now, pale as old blood, the assembled court shifted uncomfortably, many suddenly finding the polished floor fascinating as they recalled their own actions during those dark months. "This is the man you call mere mechanic," Lyra added, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "Marcus Sullivan, who saved 3 evacuation ships with his bare hands when their engines failed, who organized the lower neighborhood's disaster response when the rich fled to their space stations, who has raised his daughter to be kind in a universe that showed him only cruelty." Chancellor Vex, his scaly features pale, stepped forward with trembling words. "Your Highness, we did not know. The records were classified. The details kept secret to prevent panic. The details were kept secret to prevent shame." Queen Serafina corrected coldly. "Shame that our greatest heroes were not born in palaces, but in small apartments above repair shops. Shame that courage could not be purchased with money or inherited through bloodlines." Princess Lyra moved to the center of the hall, her mixed transformation now complete. Scales that shimmered with both dragon fire and human resilience. Eyes that held both ancient wisdom and gentle compassion. "I choose Marcus Sullivan because he represents what our kingdom could become," she declared. "Not through conquest, but through service. Not through domination, but through dedication. Not through bloodlines, but through the choices we make every day to lift each other up." And as the princess spoke these words, walking toward the great doors with dignity intact and purpose clear, no one dared speak against her decision. For they finally understood that they were witnessing not rebellion, but evolution. Not the end of tradition, but its transformation into something worthy of the heroes who had bled to protect it. 6 months later, the crystal towers of Draonius Prime hummed with a different energy. The rigid barriers between neighborhoods had begun to dissolve as nobles ventured into the mechanics quarter, not as slumming tourists, but as students eager to learn skills their privileged educations had never provided. In a small ceremony held in the palace gardens, open to citizens from every neighborhood, Princess Lyra married Marcus Sullivan under twin moons that seemed to shine more brightly than anyone remembered. Emma stood as flower girl, her painted figures now displayed proudly in the Royal Art Gallery, inspiring other children to see heroism in everyday acts of kindness. The marriage had sparked changes throughout the Dragon Kingdom. Trade schools were established in the rich neighborhoods. Scholarship programs brought promising students from the lower quarters to the royal academies. Most importantly, a new council was formed, half nobles, half commoners, to ensure that government reflected the wisdom found in every corner of society. Queen Seraphina watched her daughter and new son-in-law as they danced their first dance, remembering another night long ago when she had made a similar choice. The kingdom her husband had dreamed of was finally taking shape, built not on the foundation of conquest, but on the bedrock of mutual respect and shared purpose. Lord Payan had requested transfer to a distant outpost, unable to face the reflection he saw in Marcus Sullivan's quiet strength. In his place, new leaders emerged, dragons who had learned to measure worth by character rather than credentials, by service rather than status. As the celebration continued into the night, Emma tugged on her new stepmother's gown, her eyes bright with wonder. "Princess Lyra, will you tell me a story?" Lyra knelt down, her scales catching the moonlight as she smiled. "What kind of story would you like to hear, sweetheart? Tell me about a universe where being kind makes you strong and helping others makes you rich, and where the best heroes are the ones nobody notices until they save everyone." Lyra glanced up at Marcus, who was helping an elderly dragon lord fix his malfunctioning hover chair with patient skill. She looked at her mother, deep in conversation with Mrs. Chen about establishing a memorial garden for plague heroes. She saw nobles and commoners working together to clean up after the celebration, their laughter mixing with the gentle night breeze. "I can do better than tell you that story, Emma," she said softly. "I can show you how to help write it." In a universe built on hierarchies and ancient prejudices, sometimes a single act of recognition is enough to transform entire civilizations. And in the warm glow of the twin moons, as dragons and humans, nobles and mechanics, scholars and artists, all work together to build something beautiful, the stars themselves seem to sing with approval. For love, it turns out, is the most revolutionary force in any galaxy, especially when it refuses to recognize the boundaries others insist are permanent.